It's the 17th of August 2016. Welcome to RapBabble, episode 11. If you want to be a host with us, email us at rapbabble@gmail.com. This week, Young Thug has decided to change his name. And there's a point in every young or little rapper's life when they want to change their name. And his has come now because he's turning 25. And he's coming out with an album called Jeffrey. It could be a mixtape. And Jeffrey is his first name. And he's decided to change his name to No, My Name is Jeffrey, which is really ridiculous and kind of in line with Young Thug, who is a bit ridiculous himself in a lot of ways. So I'm glad he's changing his name. I don't really like the whole young little thing. It's just, they shouldn't do that anymore. They don't need that. Be a bit more imaginative. Especially when it's like a first name. I guess that doesn't happen anymore. There was Kim and Wayne, but like just come up with something original. So he's changing his name to No, My Name is Jeffrey, which is probably a response to Is your name Young Thug? No, my name is Jeffrey. So I hope he changes it again. He was a bit confusing with his statements. He said it'll only be for a week during the sale of the first week of the album, but then he didn't say if he was going to change his name back to Young Thug or if he's going to shorten it to Jeffrey, but people are going to call him Jeffrey, but it's a bit of a mess. Let's just wait and see what happens. We shouldn't spend too much time dwelling on it, but I did want to bring it up because also I saw an article on djbooth.net and they were talking about this exact topic. But they also took it a bit further and they were talking about his look, and his look has definitely changed. I've noticed some pictures now and he looks totally different. So before his hair it was coloured and he had a nose ring and he would wear glasses sometimes or a hat, and there was just a lot of noise around his face. So I didn't actually know what he looked like. And there are some new pictures of him where his hair is just all black and he just looks his look is much more tame and he looks like a totally different person and he looks good. So I like the change. So that's another thing, like this might be some kind of growing up process. It feels a little bit sudden actually to happen all at once, but maybe he wants people to recognize him because I don't know, the way he was looking before, it was a bit messy. That's the thing, it wasn't coherent. It wasn't like a specific style, which I would appreciate. It was just all over the place. And it might have something to do with the Calvin Klein advert that he's been on. So they chose him as a model, which is in some ways very unusual and in some ways actually makes a lot of sense. He is tall and thin and he is fashion conscious. Despite the way he looks, he is actually fashion conscious. And I'm proud for hip hop, for them choosing a rapper. This is really good for us. So I'm glad that's happened, but that might have something to do with his transformation as well, because he probably needed to clean up his look. I doubt they would have taken him the way he looked, which was really messy. And maybe he liked what he saw. Or maybe he wants to be more serious in that arena. And so he needs to clean up his look. So yeah, anyway, I spent too much time talking about the look of a rapper, but I'm glad it's gone in a direction I like at least. And at least now I can see what his face looks like. I remember I had this feeling with Future. He was on the front of Rolling Stone magazine, and his hair was everywhere. And his hair is kind of brown and black, so he's got the color mixed in there. But the thing that was quite shocking was he didn't have sunglasses on. And the first time I saw it, I just kind of thought to myself, I didn't know Future had eyes. And another rapper's doing that now, actually. French Montana's taken off the glasses. And the funny thing is, he kind of looks, in his latest video, No Shopping, which features Drake. He's got an album coming out called Mac and Cheese 4, which was just pushed back recently, so that's not good. The song is addictive. I love it. Drake's verse is really good on that. It's long as well. It kind of outshines French Montana a bit, because French Montana dilutes his verse with just like repeating the chorus in the middle of the verse. And he just kind of says like, sipping on drink and all about the moolah. He dilutes his verse down a lot. I really wish he kept it concise. Anyway, he didn't have his glasses on. Like I've never seen his eyes before, and you could see that he was either hungover or a little bit high because his eyes. You could see it in his eyes, and I mean it's better at least because he looks like a human being. Like I can connect a bit more to the guy, even though his music doesn't really foster a connection anyway. It's still good to see a person. Otherwise, they kind of look like a waxwork dummy. They feel a bit like that when they only have glasses on and you never see their eyes. Rick Ross does that as well. You barely ever see him without those. I don't like it when people do that. They'll be in a room that's not particularly well lit and they'll still have sunglasses on. And it's to keep people away, maybe, or I don't know. Or to look cool, whatever. Okay, I've totally lost the point now. Oh, yeah, the sunglasses thing, that was it. Anyway, that's the end of that story. That's where so he's got a mixtape or an album coming out, and we'll see how well that does. He's keeping the pace going. He's putting out a lot of material. He's an interesting one, and he's got the melodies right. The other story is, and this one I'm quite excited about. There's been an announcement for an EP between Gucci Mane and Drake. So there's been a lot of talk about Gucci coming out of prison, and I didn't really pay any attention to him before this because there were stories of him doing a few crazy things, and his music was always pretty empty. It was just kind of typical chart rap type stuff, and his albums kind of came and went without anyone really, like he didn't really make much of an impact, but he kept on going, and so I'm impressed by that. He puts out albums, he has his own record label, and he works hard, so I'm impressed by that. And then he went to jail, and then he came out, and it was just such a big deal on the internet. I just started to look into Gucci, and I was quite impressed by what he's done since. And even though I'm not that fond of the music, is okay. It's not too bad. It's much more coherent than what's on the charts at the moment because there's a lot of mumbling on the charts, whereas exactly every word that Gucci is saying, and it is very sort of traditional rap. He came up before this whole melodic rap era, and so his are more understandable. And yeah, I like his stuff. It's pretty decent. I listened to part of his new album. I wasn't enthused enough to listen to the whole thing, but I thought it was pretty decent, and he deserves to make another album and another album. Some people, they're not even worth putting out more. I don't know why they do, or they're allowed to, or I guess we're in a mixtape age where anyone can, but Gucci's music, I think, justifies another album and a continued career. So yes, I listened to a bit the album when he came out. I'm more interested in the man than the music itself. I had this with 50 Cent. I had this with Tupac as well. These guys, their music is all right. Well, let's put Tupac aside. He was a poet. He was really good, but I definitely liked seeing his interviews more than listening to his albums. I only really had All Eyes on Me anyway, and that was too many songs on there. And 50 Cent, like even the first album, as much as people praise it, it's good, but it's not good at the same time. It's good for not good music, let's say. I did have it, and I did play it a lot, but it just doesn't have a lot of replay value, and it's not like Ready to Die. I listened to that for the first time in 2008, and it sounded amazing. Good music doesn't age, so Ready to Die is amazing. I heard All Eyes on Me. Too many songs, dated sound. And yeah, there's just too much. I mean, my biggest issue is just he came out of prison, Tupac, and just started rapping. Just rapping. So it wasn't really focused or edited. So that's another big problem. But anyway, so now I'm interested in Gucci, but not hugely. And then Drake comes along. And he's done this before. He did this with Future with What a Time to Be Alive. I absolutely loved that project. So Views came out and I was reviewing it for this show. And I was just not bothered by Views. And I thought, let me get What a Time to Be Alive and see if that's any good. And I ended up loving that. I listened to that so much, didn't even bother listening to Views. I listened to that loads. I mean, I did listen to Views enough to review it, but I didn't play it for fun. I played it for work. What a Time to Be Alive. I played it so many times now. I love that. And as much as I'm a fan of Future and only a handful of singles, not really any of the albums, but the good thing about Future is the melodies, but not the lyrics. So I can't really listen to a whole Future project by itself, by himself. But then Drake was thrown on there, and so you have someone where I can understand the words that he's saying, and he's actually a decent lyricist. And then you got the melodies of Future, and Drake has his own melodies, and it's just the perfect marriage, and it just made a great album. And also, I've come to the realization Drake's albums by themselves are not good. I did not like Views. I don't want him in charge of making music. He can make singles, that's fine. Hold On, We're Going Home, Hotline Bling, One Dance Controller, do all that stuff. But when it comes to actually making albums and making rap songs, I don't want you making any choices, because 2 albums in a row I've just been disappointed. And I just found out recently that Take Care was actually half of that was borrowed from The Weeknd. So he does like to pull from other artists. So he has a record label, and he's definitely taken some songs from Party Next Door, who's on his label. So The Weeknd was an associate, not really a label. He wasn't on the label, but he was an associate, and he did take some songs then. And so yeah, the second album was my favorite one, and he's taken some songs for that. I looked at the credits, and you can see The Weeknd's name on 5 songs, even though he's featured on one, and he's uncredited as a feature on a second song, and then the other 3 he's not. So they must have been his. So possibly 5 out of, I think there's 15 or more. So it's only a third, but it definitely sounds like The Weeknd. Like the mood is low. The first album did not have a low mood. It had a lot of bounce to it. And the third album was kind of between the two. And the fourth album, it kind of felt like So Far Gone, which is a lot of bad R&B songs. I don't like it. He becomes quite whiny, and it just doesn't sound good. I don't like it when he does that stuff. So I don't want him in charge of his own projects. And so What a Time to Be Alive was perfect, because Future was in charge of that. He had his producers doing the production. Although Drake has some good producers. I'm starting to become quite fascinated with Boy Wonder. And when I look up the credits of Drake's songs, he's behind some of them. He even did the breakout hit, which was Best I Ever Had. So he's like half of the act. That song made him. And 40 gets a lot of credit, but actually Boy Wonder, I think, does. I mean, 40 doesn't really produce that much anyway. He's more of an executive producer, which is an important role. But I kind of think that Boy Wonder should get some of the shine. So yeah, there should be a group of 3, a triumvirate. But he's a little bit forgotten. And I looked up his credits, and he made some songs that I didn't even know were his, that weren't even with Drake as well. So, and on a side note, I found there's a female producer called Wonder Girl on the second album. Other than Missy Elliott, never in my life have I come across a female producer, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. There should be female producers. So whoever this Wonder Girl is, she was on a Drake album, and she also made Antidote. She had a part in Travis Scott's Antidote, which I played that loads. So yeah, let's hope she gets some shine. Anyway, I don't like Drake taking care of his own projects anymore. Unintended pun there. So yeah, the mixture of Gucci and Drake sounds good to me. And there's, with both of them, like I can't take a whole album of Gucci by himself, because there's a lot of like nonsense rap, a lot of non-important stuff. You know, he has one song called Richest Guy in the Room. Okay, there's only so long I can listen to all that stuff. But if he's only on half of each song, that's enough. That's enough Gucci for me. And also, And then yeah, so you put Drake on there. I like Drake's lyrics, so half a song with him, that's perfect. And then the other big thing about this album is that so Zaytoven was on Vlad TV and he was telling us the story of just like a blow by blow account of how it came together. Drake came by Gucci's place and Mike Will made it was there, Zaytoven was there. And so the four of them were there and they just started discussing, maybe we should do something together. And I think Mike Will made it is great. And he has like a handful of songs which I just think they're just brilliant. And he has so much variation in his music, and like I'm fascinated by this one producer. And then you have Zaytoven, who's been responsible for quite a few big trap hits quite recently. He did Versace with Migos. So, and this is the same thing that happened with What a Time to Be Alive. We had two big producers. We had Southside and we had Metro Boomin. And so you have four people, even though only two people's names appear on the front cover, four people involved. And I know that Future sometimes he does do like one producer mixtapes. And he chooses good producers as well. And so if the four of those guys, like I'm a fan of Zaytoven's and Mike Will made it. The four of them together, that's going to be great. So I'm really looking forward to this. I don't want Drake producing or choosing any producers, with the exception of Boy Wonder. I don't mind Boy Wonder doing things, but your choices for the other ones, I'm not happy with. Popstar was decent on the last album, but there's a lot that I skipped. Yeah, so if the four of them come together, then that is going to be a great album. I am looking forward to that. So that's everything I have for you this week. I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to the feed. So this is on rapbabble.com, on SoundCloud, YouTube, AudioMac, and Facebook. So you can see it in many different places. There's an RSS feed. Subscribe, like. I'd appreciate that loads. And I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.